This hangout on air is live. Okay. Hey, welcome to another episode of the Accidental Survivors. This is Fraser.
This is Rob.
And this is Chris, back from Gen Con.
Shut up, you bastard.
Yeah, whatever. We're not talking about Gen Con tonight. Did you
No,
not
no Gen Con.
Don't worry, it's happening.
No Gen Con.
I'm
curious to talk to yourself about Gen
contractual
Con.
obligation, actually.
Yeah, I'll bet it is. Well, as much as I hate to do this, and that sounds odd, but I am going to have to ask about the drink check. Chris, what are you drinking?
I am drinking my very last, brought back from Gen Con, Left-Handed Brewing Company Nitro Milk Stout.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
And are you drinking it with your left hand?
No, my left hand is busy doing other things.
I don't want to know.
Did you try the Gen Con beer this year?
No, I did not. It was a coffee beer, and I didn't know. The Gen Con this year was a little different than with you guys, right? Because hanging out with Brett and James, and plus we were 10 miles away, so we were shuttling or driving back and forth, which logistically it was fine, but you know those guys aren't drinkers or anything, and I didn't really
Or anything.
and I didn't go looking for like sort of the regular crew that was around there because I figured they're probably at the embassy drinking all day. So I just more or less hung out with Brett and James, which is fine. Like, I mean, we all went down together, so it was a good time. No regrets or anything, but we didn't go to any of the Gen Con really sort of hangout places.
Right.
So I didn't try the beer myself at the restaurants we ate. I didn't even ask to see if they had it. We went to P.F. Chang's a couple times.
Yeah.
Finally, because that's the first time, and the food was awesome.
It was pretty fucking chang?
It was pretty fucking chang. We had we went there the first night and we got the egg rolls, which were awesome. So we're like, yeah, we're going back. Got to get them again. And then we went to this Italian restaurant called, I believe it's called Buco's, which is basically like maybe a block up the street from P.F. Chang's. And so the deal with that place is it's more. I don't know what sort of you would call the serving sizes, but it's not like I order a plate of pasta and you order yours and so on. You order common bowls. So the small bowl would be like the size of, Rob, you're familiar with Ben Tan?
Yes.
So, like a full restaurant, pho. So if you go to a pho restaurant and get like the extra large soup bowl,
okay.
does that sort of give you a perspective, like a basketball cut in half?
Yeah.
That would be the small.
Holy crap.
So we were trying to figure out what we should order. And James had been there before, and the last time they went, there was, I think, 4 of them. And he said, well, last time we got some garlic bread, a small Caesar salad, and 2 other smalls. And he said it was about enough. So, he didn't want to get less than that for fear that we would run out of food. So we're like, all right, fine. So we got the garlic bread, we got the small Caesar salad, we got a small spaghetti with meatballs, and we got a small another spicy chicken dish. They screwed up that order, so they brought us out a large instead. So the large would be if you have like a large salad bowl. If you, I don't know if anybody's ever been to Costco, and you get the Costco-sized Caesar salad.
Okay.
Which is like. I don't know, making signs with my hand, but
that's really helpful.
So if you figure the small is the half of basketball, the large is bigger, like maybe twice that.
Really?
The large is bigger than the small.
No, hang on. No.
I'm shocked.
Chris.
Yes.
Hold on a minute. Let me see if I got this right.
So anyways, they bring out the large. They didn't charge us for the large size. They charge us for the small. So we've got, and Brett's not eating as much as he used to. So basically, he didn't want the Caesar salad because Brett's weird about salad. So he had some garlic bread. He had maybe his share of spaghetti, which basically left our shares of spaghetti, the garlic bread, the Caesar salad, and this other stuff for us. So we get through it all. We don't eat through it all. We eat till we're want to die. And we still had enough leftovers that I brought back. And that lasted me for 4 more meals.
Wow.
So, the portion sizes are, that's just the restaurant. So It was crazy, but it was good. But it was a lot more laid back. Like we were usually back by our room, say 9 o'clock, maybe 10 o'clock at night, and then just kind of chilled out in there. Um, I only ran into. I kind of rushed past Jason Petrie. I didn't even bother stop to say hi. I did run into Howard. He says hi.
Hi, Howard.
Yep. So yeah, I happened to catch him on one of the like half hours he had off from his tether to his signing chair.
Mm-hmm.
So same sort of con for him. I don't know if you guys saw any of the stats for Gen Con this year. So last year when we went, there was like 43,000, 44, whatever the official number was. So they went 56,500 and some odd this year. So that's, if you do the math, say 10,000 more people this year than there were last year. So they expanded. I think the convention hall was maybe a little bit bigger. Like Wizards of the Coast didn't even have their booth in the convention hall. They had it in sort of the board game, card game hall. They had like the back half of that. And they had their own tables also for running games. It wasn't just their store was actually very minimal, but everybody else pretty much sells their products in the convention hall itself. So maybe that's part of the reason why. But you have 10,000 extra people, but it's not like there are 10,000 people extra evenly kind of distributed throughout all the booths. So the booths that you would normally not really be busy, like if you have sort of the more indie stuff and smaller developers, and they're not any busier, but the main guys like Fantasy Flight, AEG, Paizo, Cryptozoic, those guys, that's where I think all the extra 10,000 people were. Yeah, pretty much. It felt like that. Because, I mean, the lineups, like, I got lucky enough to demo some of the stuff at Fantasy Flight and a couple and AEG and those guys and what was the other one? Shadowrun guys. Catalyst? Yeah, Catalyst. And those guys, but like and the only reason I think I got lucky there is because I hit those ones up Thursday before the Friday and Saturday crowds came in, because once those crowds came in, like you were maybe 10 guys behind you lining up to demo at multiple tables. It was just nuts.
Mm-hmm.
The Paizo booth, the one time I went in to pick up something for Kiddo, I was lucky because I only had maybe a 30 minute wait. They said most of the time, 45 minutes to an hour was pretty standard just to get in. FFG was about the same, and I didn't check out. Who else was I checked out? Catalyst wasn't too bad. The other guys weren't too bad for buying stuff, but it was nuts. And the thing with those guys, I mean, the advantage of getting in there is they have products that you can buy there before they hit retail by, a couple weeks to maybe a couple months in some cases, but you are paying full MSRP.
Mm-hmm.
So you're really, if you want to get it there, you want to get it because you want to get it first, or you just don't care about the money. So it's not like there's really throwing down any deals. Right. But that's nothing new, and everybody going into those booths knows it, so it's not really a surprise or anything. But I always find it amusing, like how busy the FFG booth is. And the big draws this year were there's a Warhammer 40K collectible card game that they've launched. Some of the new Star Wars ships, they're launched there, maybe a few weeks before we get them here. But those guys all sold out fast. They sold out Thursday morning. They brought in more Friday morning. They sold out. And I don't even remember if they had any more Saturday morning. But the lineup was still just massive. Wrapped around like multiple. Their whole area was a lineup around their whole area. And if you've never been to Gen Con, it's kind of hard to put this in perspective. But a typical booth is maybe 10 by 20. Mm-hmm. So they have, I don't know how many of those booth sections they would have. Like they by far had the biggest area for their store plus all their demo areas. Paizo is probably the next biggest, and then the guys that do Legendary. Doesn't matter. But yeah, so there's a lot of the big retail guys. They really, like the big manufacturers, really have a lot of space, and Gen Con is Gen Con. I mean, you guys have been, so you know what it's like. And anybody that hasn't been there, if you were into gaming at all, you really should go at least once because it's a pretty awesome time. Everybody's heard the gamer horror stories, but I've yet to really run into any of that at Gen Con. I'm sure if you look in the right places, you can find it. But, most people are there just to have a good time and hang out and kind of do your own thing. And it's a good time. Like if you are into board games, role-playing games, pretty much anything you want, movies, video games. They've got the tournament scene, of course, is going on. All that stuff. It's there, and it is the place to be. And then the cool thing is like everything around Indianapolis, pretty much whenever they throw a convention, all the restaurants are, sort of geared up for that convention. So yeah, they'll be busy, but we never had to really wait too long to get into any restaurants. And there's so many in that downtown area that if you cannot find your food of choice, you don't know what you're looking for, because they've got everything down there. It's a really cool time. And the weather this year was great. It wasn't super sweaty or super hot, which helped some of the smell. Still had the Indianapolis urine smell when you caught that waft when you were walking around outside. That wasn't
So like,
it wasn't as bad.
You mean like all the time?
Yeah, all the time. But inside the convention hall, it was not too bad, not humid. Trying to think of some of the knockout things that I saw this year. There was two sort of bigger games. So you had Golem Arcana, which is a miniature, kind of skirmish miniature game, but the gimmick to that, if you will, is that the mechanics are controlled through your smart device, be it a tablet or a phone, and you have a wand. So all the game rules for all the units are controlled in this tablet. So you use your wand and tap on your figure, and then tap on the map where you want to move, or tap on your target, and then that uploads it into the tablet, and it does all your hit and damage calculations and tracks all your hit points and stuff. So it didn't, to me, I didn't dig it. I thought that the game felt really simplistic. I'm sure if you kind of get into it and start collecting all the stuff, you can really do some interesting combos. But to me, it seemed to be a lot more cumbersome than just, move your guy, roll some dice, like every other miniature game out there. And every other miniature game, this is all that one is really seems to be duplicating. It's just removing the dice, and it will get rid of some of the rules ambiguity, because you can't like call it or not, but it's all square-based movement. There's the strategy, at least with the demo we were running, and part of that could be the demo, there didn't really seem to be any depth of it. Like you could move a few guys and attack, but there didn't really seem to have any terrain effects, although I'm sure they were included in the game. It was hard to really judge what they were doing because all the calculations are held behind the scene. The kind of one neat thing it did is you would have, you might be moving around the map, and a random event might happen, and there's no indicator that it's going to happen because it's just generated inside the game, so you're not like flipping cards to see what happens. So that was kind of a neat thing, but it just felt very simplistic to me. Now there was another game called World of Yo-Ho, which again was a board game, but in this one you have a large map, and the tiles are basically the size of a smartphone, so iPhone, Android, etc. And so your piece is your phone. So by the default is everybody needs a smartphone, which in these day and age, it's not too hard to come by. Pretty much everybody has. It doesn't have to be a smartphone, sorry, so it could be an iPod too. But basically you put your piece on the map, and you move your piece on your phone around the map, and you have your ship. And it's a ship-to-ship combat game. So all your stats and everything are on your phone. And as you're moving around and exploring, it's redrawing the map on your phone. So if your phone is partially covering like an island, the island will be redrawn on that corner of your phone. When your phones get next to each other and you get into ship-to-ship combat, you can set up on your phone like all your special maneuvers and tricks and all that you want to do. So that's sort of like a hidden element like you would have if you had a hand of cards. And then you set your ships down, and they'll start shooting cannons back and forth, and you can actually watch as the cannon goes off your phone screen and onto your opponent's screen and hit his ship. And again, you could be moving around the maps, and your ship might get randomly attacked by like a sea monster, and they have the graphics of like the Kraken come up and grab your ship and do all that. So that I thought was, again, it's nothing really totally new to a board game, but I just thought that application of using a smart device as your game piece was a lot cooler than the way Golem Arcana was handling it. And I think the other thing, I asked the guy a bunch of questions, like, what about this situation? What about that situation? He had answers for it. He wasn't like, oh, well, we're working on it. This is a product that's probably kickstarting in November. Um, so, for example, one thing is, well, what if you're playing with your kids that don't have smartphones? He said, well, you can, in that case, just use one smart device as sort of the brain, and you can use pawns to represent the ships and move them around, and it'll do their thing. The other thing he said, he was trying to promote family time, game time. So, yeah, everybody's got their smartphones, and instead of sitting around the table chatting, you play this game. And so he said, if you want, and again, it's optional. So the one mode is if you turn it on and somebody's phone rings, if you answer that phone, as long as you're on the phone, everybody else starts racking up points. So trying again to encourage you not to, distract yourself by the technology and kind of chat and talk on the phone and stuff. So you can, you just keep going, and fine, you want to take that phone call, but everybody else is getting points. The other kind of cool thing is with that one is you can have, so say I've got like a game I'm playing with my daughter, and then might have a game I'm playing with a friend, and or however you want to do it. So you can have multiple save game states. So you can, because all the board is a map. There's no other pieces to set up, no cards, like in Merchants and Marauders, right? You couldn't really easily save that game state between games. Whereas this one, you just have the board, and it keeps track of where all your save games are. So once you want to move between games, you just tells you, all right, put your phone here, put the guy's phone here, and you keep playing. So that was pretty cool. He said, they're going to work towards like online leaderboards and different ways to handle it. But I thought it was a really neat idea, and that was, of all the games I saw in terms of something new and different, that one really impressed me the most because it was a seemingly simple game. There wasn't a lot of, like Golem Arcana is pretty hardcore because you're spending, like, the base game itself is $120 and you're got to collect all the figures, right? Whereas this, the game, he says, is probably going to launch for Kickstarter about $60. You have your map. You might have a couple other little things, and then the rest, obviously, you have your smartphone. But it's very approachable, and he said it was easy to get into, and we were watching him demo it, and yeah, I mean, you can be up and running very quick because the rules themselves, in terms of moving, are no more difficult than like checkers, right? You're just moving your phone around the board. So that was cool. But everybody's getting in on this. FFG has their XCOM. I don't know if you guys saw anything about that.
I'm familiar with the video game, but...
Right, so they're doing a board game now, and again, an app controls the board game. And I tried to get a demo of that going, but again, the lineups were nuts. But essentially, if you remember the old like VCR horror board games,
Yep.
similar. That would be about the closest way of talking about this one. So you have the app that controls what's going on in the game, and you're all working together to stop the alien invasion, which is basically what the app is running, the alien invasion. And I believe it's more or less real time. So it's not a very slow and plodding game. It's a very fast, active, like reactive game. And it's FFG, so whether or not how well it plays, hard to say, but component-wise, I mean, it was gorgeous sitting there. Nice little miniatures for everything, and the maps are great. So production value-wise, it was good. So that was kind of another interesting thing, but more and more companies, I think, are going to be involved trying to bridge that gap between traditional board game and an electronic game.
I don't feel like I don't have confidence that it's going to catch on, but just because I've seen it before.
Yeah.
And maybe it's because of the clunkiness of the VCR or of the the DVD. Maybe as soon as you've got it in your hand in a smartphone, it's different. Who knows? It'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, like I said, like I played Golem Arcana, and I was like, all right, whatever. So that one felt clunky. XCOM, I couldn't get a play. I watched a bit of it. It seemed to be fairly seamless and fairly a fast-moving game. The World of Yoho, though, like that one, I think they nailed it. Like they used the technology in such a way that, yes, it's technology, but it still feels like a traditional board game. And the technology didn't really hamper it. It just kind of improved it in subtle ways. So I thought that was really clever. So, I mean, we can only wait and see. I'm sure, these guys are not the first guys to do it. You can get them at probably in the dollar store now, but they had all those tablet base where your screen of your tablet is your board game, right? And you had the little pieces you move around.
Yep.
So this is not really new. They've been doing this for a couple of years now in different ways to try and see how it catches on. So they'll just keep trying and trying and trying until a few more people sort of nail that formula, and other people will adapt what they did to try and build on it. And that's just sort of the nature of the beast, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, technology is not going away. Board games aren't going away. And I think you'll have this, you'll always have your hardcore board games, and you'll have your video games, and then you'll have this sort of bridge in between them. So I think we'll see in the future it just continues down these
Kind
paths.
of like there are things that are known and things that are unknown,
Kind of like that.
and in between are the doors.
There you go.
Well, Fraser, what are you drinking?
Oh yeah, segue, right?
Right. Yeah, that was an interesting. I'd actually prefer to ask you, Rob, 'cause I'm embarrassed with what I'm drinking.
Uh-oh.
Oh, okay. I am drinking an About Face from Block 3, which is a brewery local to us from St. Jacobs.
I've been told to go there.
It's an interesting spot. They've been there for a little over a year now, I think, or maybe it's closer to 2. It's a little Spartan. They have a couple of small tables and some. They've got, of course, all their brewing equipment in the back. You can just wander back and take a look at it. When we were there, I just kind of, as I have a tendency to do, I just sort of wander into areas whether or not I'm allowed to be there or not. So I just sort of wandered back into the brewing area, and there's a couple of guys back there, and they're checking gauges and looking at things and doing stuff.
Yeah.
And then we chatted with a guy by the bar and sampled a few different things. So they've got whatever they have sort of their featured beers that they have. I think they had 3 on at that point. So we sampled a few of the beers that they had on right then, and bought a couple of bottles of the About Face, which is nice. It's because I tend to drink lighter stuff in the summertime. It sort of fits that bill. I guess they call it German Alt, and I'm not really sure what that means, but that's what they call it.
Okay. Now, I have a friend that lives in Elmira, and the thing he told me about that place is if you go in there, they have I can't remember what he called it, but basically it's a big-ass beer. So you can order.
A growler. They have growlers.
Yeah, growlers, that's the word. Yeah.
Yeah, they sell them, and you can get it filled up. I think the first fill is because you've got to pay for the growler and then pay for the fill. So I think it comes out to less than $20. It's like $16 or $17 if I remember correctly. And then anytime you go back with your growler, they will fill it up for $7.
Okay.
So that's a really, really good deal
Yeah.
with whatever they have on tap at the time. So you're limited to that. But like I said, they had 3 on, and you're bound to find something that you like. And when it comes right down to it, push comes to shove, it's beer.
True. Though unlike
You don't have to get all fancy pants about it. It's beer.
Yep.
But
And a
anyways,
lot of
yeah,
it.
that's what your friend means by a big ass beer. They fill growlers.
Nice.
Yeah.
And do they serve food there? No, so just a beer.
No, just like I said, it's pretty Spartan. They have the bar there with some taps. They have a very small sort of retail space for shirts and things. Like
Right.
they have their logos on, and then they have I was really surprised with how little was in the space. I'm not sure. Now, of course, this is going to go over the head of the majority of our 4 listeners. Chris, I'm not sure whether you remember the old toy store. They're in that space.
So where the church was?
No, that's where the toy store is now.
Oh, the place before.
Where it was beforehand. It was a little bit further north and kind of
Well,
back
they're
in
right
behind
next to
everything.
that new big monstrosity that's going to be the condos, aren't they?
Yes, that's right. And
Yeah.
Quarry, the Quarry Integrated Graphics offices are there too. Anyway, so it's a big space, and there's hardly anything in it.
Mhm.
But who knows? It's only been at most 2 years. And who knows what their plans are, but like I said, they have a small retail space, a small cooler with product in it, and then the bar and a couple of areas for sitting. But other than that, and then of course all their brewing equipment right in the back.
Yeah.
But other than that, not much. It's a pretty wide open space.
All right.
Cool.
Yeah.
Mm,
Well, maybe they'll try and expand it.
who knows?
Because I
But
thought
the beer is very nice, and I like supporting the local breweries. So,
for sure.
Fraser, what are you so
Yeah.
embarrassed about?
Water.
I've been there, buddy.
So you're drinking American beer, right?
Yeah, pretty much. I'm sad because I've had a collection of very good beers that have gone in and out of my fridge since our last recording. We were actually in Toronto. We had a week-long vacation. We went to visit some friends from Vancouver who were at their dad's cottage in the Bruce Peninsula, and
Nice.
then we visited my dad quickly for a day. And then we were in Toronto and we did the aquarium, the zoo,
that's
and the
great.
science center. It's all excellent. Well, right by the aquarium is both the roundhouse for steam whistle and Amsterdam Brewing.
Yes.
So I was torn, but I ended up going with getting some Bone Shaker at Amsterdam. So I've had that in my fridge along with Muskoka Detour and Rhyme and Reason.
I got a mixer pack, a sampler pack of Muskoka stuff, and I was looking at the bottles. That is the same brewery that
Is it?
you brought. Yes, it is. Because I was reading the back, and the phrase in the blurb on the back is exactly the same. as
Taste of the
blurb-
Cottage?
No. Yours, Gary McMullen. And it was the same blurb that was on the cans that you brought to the first Cottage Con. And I remember that because we were drunk out of our minds, and Chris was reading the back of this can. Cheers, Gary McMullen. And it's on the back of the bottle. It's the same. So it's nice to see that they got their act together.
They fucking well did, thank God.
Yeah, so I've tried the Detour, I've tried the Summer Vice, I've tried the Mad Tom IPA.
Oh, yeah.
And there was another one. I don't know whether I've tried the fourth one yet. I can't remember. But yeah, nice.
Yep.
Amsterdam Brewing used to be on Queen Street, I believe, but they've moved. Yeah.
They're right down on the boardwalk now, and it's very nice. They've got a very nice setup there. Both the restaurant and like brew pub and the retail. So it's good. Anyways.
Well, good night, everyone.
Yeah, exactly.
This has been Chris's Gen Con recap.
That's right.
Thanks for
Keep
joining.
going.
No, you can't. No,
I'm
you
sure you could,
cannot.
but we don't want you to.
We got lucky at the border.
Anyways,
Oh,
so D&D.
as lucky as Fraser did.
No,
A different kind of
lucky. No, actually,
Oh,
coming
real
back, 3 cars in front of us on the way back, and heading down, maybe 10. Smooth sailing. That
Nice.
was good. Didn't get grilling by the prick like we did that one year.
They're going
Listen,
over, like
yeah.
crossing into the U.S.
Yeah. That you think you're special?
Like I said, I don't know who it was who said it, but I think he wanted us to invite him.
I believe so. So yeah, he had the day off.
Dungeons and Dragons.
No, that shit.
Dungeons and Dragons.
Weird shit like that.
See that segue?
Speaking of
I am
which-
on the ball.
I'm the one who
You're
said
in
Dungeons
someone's
and Dragons.
balls.
I said dungeon. What? Hey,
We haven't recorded.
It's D&D Player's Handbook and
Yes.
starter kit, starter set. In
and
hand,
the
have
D
played.
is put up. Well, the free, like the basic DMG
Yes.
is up now.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm loving that they're doing. There's so much about this that I'm excited about. There's a couple things I'm not excited about, but for the most part, I think 95% of what I've seen so far.
Oh, for
And I mean,
Christ's sake, Fraser, can't you ever just be happy?
No, he's Scottish.
Exactly.
It's raining. We need rain, but not too much rain.
Oh, that's too much.
Oh, it's too much.
It's cold. It's too cold. Oh, now it's too warm.
I wanted 3 1/4 cup of water. I got 3/5. It's wrong. But anyways.
I have too much money in my pockets. No Scottish guys
you
ever
will
said that.
Ever.
Yeah, no Scottish man ever.
Said
But-
no Scottish guy ever. Yeah, have you had a chance to play it?
We did. I played with the girls. Wait, that's
Oh, great.
all right.
Wow. Whoa.
I played D.
My wife was like, "What are you doing?" at least ask for permission first.
So I played. We did the starter set. We did the Cragbra, whatever hideout. The very
Cragmaw is
first
the core.
part.
Cragmaw.
Yeah.
And yeah, we had a lot of fun with that. It got me just to take like. So I mean, I leafed through the player's handbook, but along with the starter set, there's enough rules there for you to play, which is what we were using
Right.
instead of trying to go through the huge player's handbook.
And And I don't know if you've gone through it now, but really there's not a lot. There's definitely more in the player's handbook, but in terms of actual pure rules, it's
Yeah.
not a huge deviation.
No.
And I don't recall, and then maybe there's a few subtleties, but I don't think there's any places where the player's handbook um, invalidates anything in the starter box or in the free rules for
Oh
that
no,
matter.
absolutely not. No, I mean,
So that was pleasantly surprised to see that.
so if you, I can't remember what it was called, but in Gen Con last year,
Yeah.
the Dragon Spear, I think it was, you could buy. Like that's
Yeah.
by the wayside now. I mean, the adventure still, I'm sure it's pretty easy to use these rules with that, but the rules that were presented there are now superseded by these. But we knew that was going to happen anyways.
Right.
Now I have no idea if they're going to have anything like the OGL or the I can't remember game system license or whatever from 4E. But what they have done, as Chris mentioned, is put a very basic version. Like for example, it doesn't have feats, but a very basic version of the rules up for free that you can download, which is awesome.
And they've been updating it as they go along too.
And that is fantastic. The way that they've gone about the release, I'm a huge fan of, both being able to see how the game developed, actually see the impact of feedback on the game, and then, I mean, the starter set is good, but I'm just very happy that we're back to the D&D that I know.
And I will say that putting out the free thing, like that's the only reason I bought into it was because I got the free thing and I got a chance to go through it first, and I was like, you know what, it's actually pretty good.
It's not bad.
And then I took the chance on the starter box, and I liked what I see. It was kind of it's like they took D&D back to its roots and started rebuilding it, but still using some more modern kind of game design. So you've got backgrounds, you've got perks and flaws, and those things, they're not huge. They're not huge mechanics for the game. They're definitely new for D&D. But they're trying to make it the biggest things are, I think, and probably if you talk to anybody playing this new edition, the thing that you're going to love or hate, and so far I haven't met anybody that's hated it, is the advantage disadvantage mechanic.
Oh, that's awesome. Yep.
It's really what makes this game, in at least in my opinion, shine. Because everything else is still very fundamentally like traditional Dungeons and Dragons. You still get your stats, you've got your stat bonuses. There's things that they have changed with all that. Like now, there's a few good things actually. So, and I'll touch on them. We'll get back to advantage disadvantages. I think because that's a sort of a bigger discussion. But some of the little things that they've done that I've really liked is that none of the races now have negative stat modifiers.
Right.
So no longer it's like, all right, I want to be a dwarf paladin, but your charisma gets hammered, so you can't really make a good paladin. You can now play a dwarf paladin. You don't have there are other races will make a better paladin than the dwarf, but you're not penalized anymore.
Right.
And that goes for any of the races. Half-orcs finally get to shine.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
They were a horribly designed race. Like, they're supposed to be badass, tough half-orcs, and they were always really badly nerfed. And it made the mechanics never never supported the fiction. And I would say, kind of in general, a lot of the races, like why, elves are everything better than a human, and yet they get these negatives. Humans were like, fine, they're the average race, and you get a couple extra feats, which help. They're not bad. But now humans, +1 across the board. Or you can take, 2+2s, or was it 2+2s in a feat, or 2+1s in a feat?
Yeah.
For whatever the alternative. So you can still sort of get back to that. And I heard some people have said, well, all they did was up the bar by 1 level. And kind of they did. But a negative is worse than a 0.
Yep.
Like, it's not that they just moved the level up 1. Because then you still would have had, like, humans fine. If humans were baseline and they didn't get any modifiers, then all the races still would have only had a bonus. Right? So you would have had, instead of a +2 and a +1, they would have at the very least had a +1 if they just moved that level up. So again, you're not dealing with any negatives. I think without getting into the whole artistic design of halflings, all the races, which it is what it is, whatever.
Yeah.
I think generally a lot of people like the 3E design of the halfling, sort of the small kind of human, but whatever. It's an artistic sampling. All the races kind of have their little things that they're good at, and they feel. I would have to go back to 3rd edition and kind of do a comparison, but I don't know. Just reading through them, they felt a little more balanced to me. It's hard to say. They might be totally the same, like ability-wise, as they were before, and so maybe it's just kind of my like rekindled enthusiasm to play D&D, but they just felt better. Half-orcs are definitely better, and half-elves, I would say, are definitely better than they've ever been before.
It's very difficult for me to comment on races because generally I only played humans. So
right. Yeah.
But I do like the way that the race, the class, and the background all intersect.
Mm-hmm.
I find very very well designed. It's elegant. It's clean, and again, because the classes also have these like subclasses.
Yeah.
The ability to customize is fantastic. And again, kind of like saying with certain races, certain classes work, and with certain classes, certain backgrounds work. But that doesn't mean you can't build something suboptimal just because it seems like really cool. Like
right.
a dwarf, a dwarf paladin artisans or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
It might not be the best, but you can do it.
Right. And the thing I think this time around is that the classes are a lot more interesting, and because like wizards and clerics always basically they continually scaled and got better. Like the best they ever got is like all the way to the end. Whereas if you took like fighters and thieves in particular, yeah, I mean they're always getting better, but they hit 10th level, they're no longer getting their hit points, and all you're getting is like feats and maybe the odd ability. They really taper off. So by the time fighters are 20th level fighter in previous editions, excluding 4th edition where every class was the same. But 3rd edition and even 2nd edition, like playing a 20th level fighter was basically, or a 20th level thief for that matter, was pretty useless. You had maybe certain circumstances where they're good, but compared to what a wizard or a cleric could pull off, they were underpowered. Whereas now, I think what they've done is really made playing a specific class all the way through very rewarding. Because now, like fighters with the different archetypes, you've got like if you want magic, just be an Eldritch Knight, or the thief has their I forget what they call it, but the mage version of the thief as well. And all the classes kind of get really neat bonuses all the way through to the end, and the high level bonuses are really really cool. Whereas what they've done with sorcery, clerics or wizards or all of them, for anybody that isn't familiar, so the way that you handled it before, like if you're a 20th level wizard and you cast a magic missile, it went off as if it was like a high level spell, like you got multiple dice of damage by the level of the spell, and you could basically spam magic missile all day long. So what they've done now to scale that is if you are a 20th level wizard and you cast a magic missile, if you still cast it as a 1st level spell, it's going to do 3d4. If you want to make it have all the dice of damage, you have to use one of your 9th level slots to cast it. And you only get, I think, one of them at 20th level. I don't have the charts with me, but they've really kind of downplayed how powerful magic gets. You still have like access to wish spells, but you can't spam these real low-level spells that do massive damage. If you want your little spell to do massive damage, you have to use up your higher-level slots.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was really well done because that, again, helps balance out sort of the disparity you would have between magic-using classes and non-magic-using classes.
Yep.
So they've kept those. They've sort of done the niche protection thing. You can still do dual class if you want. I kind of looked over the rules, but haven't really sort of kind of figured out, is it actually worth it or not? Because I was looking at a fighter saying, yeah, I would gladly play this all the way through.
Exactly.
Or a rogue or any of those.
It's interesting enough that you don't need to multi-class. And just going back to wizards and sorcerers and stuff like that, I really like how they have. So for the wizard, for example, now you have spells you can memorize, but you also have a number. You have the number in your spell book.
Yeah.
You have the number that you can memorize, and you have the number that you can cast.
Right.
Meaning that you can memorize 4, even if you can cast 2. So you're not you can kind of like prepare better.
Yeah, it's not like you have to remember 2 magic missiles.
Right, exactly.
Exactly. Yeah, which is one of the reasons why when I was looking through the starter kit, I wanted to try the wizard first because I wanted to see how that played, and it felt the wizard feels a lot like what's the term that I heard used? Laser fingers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because of the cantrips.
Because of the cantrips, but the cantrips don't make him make a wizard any more potent than a fighter who can swing a sword every round.
Right, or an archer or any of those.
Exactly. I mean, that's his go-to. But yeah, when I sort of sussed out that you don't have to memorize those 2 magic missiles. You can memorize what you can memorize and what you cast are different, and I was really happy to see that change.
Yeah, and what I like about the cantrips for all the casting classes, it means that it's like, all right, I cast my 2 magic missiles, I now cower.
Exactly. I'm done.
You can do stuff, and the cleric spells are some of the damage dealing cleric spells are ridiculous. So you've got inflict wounds, which is 3d8 or 3d10 at first level. They've got a ranged version basically that does, I think it's 3d6 or 3d8. I could look it up, but that's the gist. Like, these are first level spells that are doing basically one-shotting pretty much anything you're going to generally encounter at first level.
Yeah, and you're let's see, 3d10.
Yeah.
It's a melee spell attack though, so that's the thing.
It is. Yeah, there's an element to it, but still, like, casters, the casting bonus to do a melee spell for a wizard is not your like. Previously, if a mage wanted to do a melee touch attack,
yep,
they had to do a touch attack, which was not a wizard's forte.
Mm-hmm.
So now you're just using your same magic ability, so you're +5 or whatever it is. You're just as effective as a fighter at hitting because you're using your magic ability.
Mm-hmm. You're just leaving yourself open for the return attack.
Right, if you're in melee combat. So
right.
there is risk to it, but
absolutely, which makes sense, right? Like if you're going to be able to do that kind of thing. The thing that I liked was that the Ray of Frost, my youngest, who's 5 years old, once she realized that the Ray of Frost was kind of like what Elsa is, boom, that was it. It was Ray of Frost all day long. And it's like you can do like match missile and everything. It's like, I know I like Ray of Frost.
Yeah.
But there was also one of the things that we were doing, and it's not just because it was kids. This is how I kind of ran. A few years back, I did at the Game Summit here in Ottawa. I did a D&D Next game with one of the playtest packages. And how I ran that and how I'm running this is very similar to how I'm running most of my games now, where I don't care what the narrative is. You said you roll to hit, you hit. Like, you can make the narrative whatever the heck you want. So for the Ray of Frost, we were doing a lot of, okay, you missed, well, you froze a tree, right? Mm-hmm. And that makes and again, I don't think it's just for kids either. I think for anybody, that kind of failure doesn't feel as bad as just straight up you missed.
Right.
Like there was an effect, something happened.
Spell didn't just kind of fizzle.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's kind of cool, like, because again, this is something that we see in movies and TV and stuff like that, like especially in things that we're seeing now with like the Avengers and Guardians of the Galaxy, even when you're missing, some stuff is happening environmentally, right? So it seems like I feel more comfortable doing that with this edition, not only because I've changed as a DM or a game master or whatever, but I think that this edition also has added so much into it from the kind of games that I like that I feel it's a more evolved game. So I feel more comfortable playing it like I would play old school Hack or like I would play Fate or whatever.
Right. Yeah, I think by them not really having a difficulty chart,
mm-hmm.
you have sort of your standard.
Yet.
The DMG, who knows what sort of optional stuff they'll throw in there to bring back that comfort level for some
mm-hmm.
people. But luckily, it's not core. Player's Handbook, those are your core rules.
Yep.
So, I mean, you have your difficulty levels, like easy, medium, and whatnot. So that gives you your 5 to 25 difficulty range. But that's it. Like, that's the only difficulty sort of setting you have. You have certain modifiers for cover and a few other things, but everything else is basically left up to the advantage-disadvantage mechanic, which is there's a few mechanics that will give you advantage or disadvantage, like if you're hiding or someone's grappled. Like there's a few ways to just get it, but the rest of the time, yeah, sneak attack. But the rest is really subjective.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, all right, you're giving me permission on how to use that. So it's almost like saying, yeah, just, run your game how you want to run your game. So when I'm playing with Kiddo, I give her a little bit more leeway.
Yep.
Because, again, we're only playing like solo game 2, right? So she doesn't have a group backup. She's kind of on her own. So I'm a little more flexible with the things that she'll get an advantage for. But essentially, I'm allowing her to be a little bit more heroic and a little bit more action movie star than I would be if we were doing like with a full group and sort of maybe a little bit dark fantasy. I'd be a little bit more to give out those advantages sort of willy-nilly. Because again, it's a more mature crowd, and they sort of, you can do that. Whereas her, though, I want to give her more of a fighting chance too, so that helps. But yeah, I mean, she wants to do something. It's like, yeah, that's cool. Why not have the advantage? Like, same way if you want, like, that's kind of a bad idea. If you do it, there's going to be a disadvantage. But if she wants to do it, go ahead. It's not -10. You have really little chance. It's like, yeah, you're likely not going to succeed, but it's the roll of the dice. Like, there's still.
Right.
I was playing, oddly enough, last night in another game. I was playing a cleric, and I think I failed like every roll except for 2. I mean, 1 hit roll, and I had 1 other roll where it was an opposed check, and I had a disadvantage to it, and that was the other roll I succeeded. It was just I rolled lots of 1s and 2s for the rest of the night. It was painful.
Yeah.
Such is the whim of dice at times, but again, like you can just say, it's kind of like the Star Wars games where like, yeah, just say what you want to do, and we'll add some positive dice, add some negative dice, and let the dice really determine your success rate. And this is doing that. You can, of course, getting back to like backgrounds and personality traits, you can use those to gain inspiration that you can then use to hand in for an advantage, or spend it to give another player an advantage, which I thought was kind of a cool tool. There also seems to be a lot more sort of utility actions, if you will. So you've got a dodge mechanic now in combat. So for your action, you can dodge, which while you're dodging, until your next round or until your next action, anybody trying to attack you has a disadvantage.
Mm-hmm.
That is a much better mechanic because it, compared to before, where I think they've had that dodge action before, but it was like, +2 or +5 to your AC or something like that.
Yeah.
Which doesn't really scale well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You've got an assist action now, so you can basically, if you're, I have very little chance of hitting this guy, but the fighter does, so I can help the fighter by basically sticking my sword in the bad guy's face, but that gives the fighter an advantage on his actions.
Mm-hmm.
Or help the thief, and if the thief has an advantage, he gets to do his backstab damage. So there's lots of these sort of little systems all playing off this advantage-disadvantage mechanic to manipulate your strengths, and it's still very narratively driven. And I think that at least when I read that, I was like, you're giving me a lot of freedom on how to handle this. I'm not looking for charts, and I think anytime, especially sort of newer gamers, I think as soon as you start listing, here are the things you can do,
Mm-hmm.
here are the things you can't do, there's this mindset, and I mean, it's happened to me, and I think it's happened to all of us at one point that we've been playing a long time, where we're like, well, the game doesn't say I can, and it doesn't say I can't, so what do I do here? You know what I mean? Like, if you've got a chart that lists, these are the sort of 10 things you can do, and these are the modifiers, that, well, what the hell do I do with the 11th thing? And then you get into this big, long book battle. Well, now it's like, whatever, you just do it, or you have an advantage, or you have a disadvantage.
Which I think is what is. I mean, that really is the basis of rule bloat. Is that
right?
These things were in. So there were rules for some things in 1E, and then there weren't rules for other things. But people were like, well, we need rules for this because we have rules for this. People aren't doing it because they don't. Okay, well, let's add rules for that, and then et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Instead of saying, these are some examples of some ways you can handle some stuff.
Yes.
And if it's not in the book, just figure it out. Like you have all the and especially now with like skills and ability scores, like ability checks and skill checks, you have everything you need to deal with any situation. It doesn't matter what it says. And again, like you said, with advantage, disadvantage, doesn't matter what it says in the. You don't need a rule for every single thing. Like you can handle it with these very simple systems that are intrinsic to the game.
Right. I think if you maybe it's not, but kind of reading through that core rule section, which really is like how do you do an action and combat. Those are the two main things. It seemed to be a lot smaller chapters than I recall reading in previous editions. Well, at least maybe second edition, third edition, which are the two most recent ones that I recall reading through. There's a lot, as you said, there's a lot less detail to it. There's a few exceptions, like grapple has its own sort of mechanic on how to grapple, and there's a couple examples like that, but they don't really deviate from the core thing. They just give you a few sort of special ways to handle it, because I think it's tricky anytime you want to impose sort of an action on a player or an NPC where it's not really I'm hitting them with the sword, you're trying to make them do something. It does get a little more complicated, especially if you do it to another, like a DM wants to do to a player. They sometimes feel like you don't want to have your kind of character be controlled. Nobody really likes that. So I think there's a few cases like that where they have a few more rules just to sort of say, you know what, they just lay it out so that there's none of that. It's not like where the DM's cheating. It's like, yeah, this is a grapple and this will happen to you. So I'm okay with that. But for the most part, I mean, you go back to basic Dungeons & Dragons, you had stats and a stat check. And everybody played the game, and we came up with the crazy stuff because you didn't have all these other rules. You just kind of went with it, right?
Yep. And I also, like, one of the things I really liked in the playtest package I used when I ran the game that I did a year or two back was how undefined the skills were, and that remains. Where the skills are listed, but there is no definition for the skills. At least I don't recall seeing any. And I love that.
They are there.
There's a list of them, but
they kind of say what they're for.
So they're linked to abilities.
Right.
But if you recall in 3E and which had the skills, each skill had it was like a spell, right? Like there was a description. This is what the skill is, and these are some applications for the skill. This is like strength, athletics. What's athletics? Whatever.
Yeah.
Athletics?
Right.
Sure.
Yeah,
why not?
There's no real mechanics tied to the skills. It's just a description. You're right.
Right. Yeah. So I like that because then it leaves it very much open. You've got swimming, running, jumping over a wall. Is it acrobatics? Is it athletics? Well, what skill do you have? Okay, well, let's use that one then. It leaves it much more open. And to me, that is a huge advantage. I know to some people it might not be, but to me, that's a massive advantage. The funny thing at the table when I was explaining how skills were used was that there was both excitement and concern because they were excited when we were playing it as they saw that I was very amenable to them using whatever skill they had, like to give them the benefit of the doubt. But then they're like, with a bad GM or with a bad DM, they're going to abuse this. They're going to say, no, it's not athletics. It's acrobatics. You don't have acrobatics, like that kind of thing. So, I guess is true.
Yeah, I mean, you can fall back on that. Like, is jumping a fence acrobatics or athletics? So I'd say, well, it depends. Are you jumping the fence to jump over the fence, or are you trying to do like a backflip triple Conrana over the fence? How are you getting over the fence, or maybe even the height of the fence might play a factor, or how quickly you need to get over the fence. Or
the only question I'm asking is, which one do you have? I have athletics. Fine, that's the one you're using.
And they even have.
I'm on the same page as Fraser. Whatever speeds the game up. I'm not going to say, how are you going to jump over what is your intent? Like, I'm jumping over the fence. Okay, well, roll one of them.
What have you got? What do you want to roll?
Yeah.
I want to do my acrobatics. Right?
That's one of the things I like, again, about perception and investigation. These are all very broad, almost all-encompassing skills that you can that you can use in all sorts of different ways, and there isn't a written description about
Yeah.
what it is exactly.
And the one thing I've used, which, and maybe it is a rule, I haven't seen it, is so you have your passive perception, which is just 10 plus your modifier.
Yep.
So I've been using that a few times now for any number of skills, like passive acrobatics, passive this, passive that, because basically that's like the old D20 where you could, the rule of take 10. I don't see why, if it's just sort of a generic action, you know what, if the difficulty's 10 and your passive acrobatics or athletics is 10, 11, 12, whatever, yeah, fine, you don't need to roll, you just do it.
Yeah, exactly, and that I like doing that too. Like I always harken back to Fraser's story about the guy trying to climb a tree, and you made him roll, and afterwards you sort of, why did I bother doing that? He was just climbing a tree, and I think of that like, well, if this person is like climbing a windowsill, like climbing through a first-story window, I'm not going to make somebody roll for that. That's just, these people are supposed to be, somewhat. Well, I mean, it's hard to say when you look at our group, but these characters are supposed to be somewhat capable.
Yeah.
So, climbing a tree or jumping through a first floor window from the ground level, just do it. If it's going to keep the pace going, let's keep the pace going.
And also, and when I say I'm using those abilities passively, it's only when there's, all right, what is your chance of failure? Like, only a failure matters. Like climbing in a first door window, doesn't matter if there's nobody chasing you. But if someone's chasing you, there's an element of, like, how quickly do you get up? Is it easy for you to do? Could you maybe fumble and fall because there's somebody hot on your heels? I would call for a roll in those sort of cases. Or maybe use like a passive ability to say, yeah, no problem, you get up there. But generally speaking, yeah, I mean, if it doesn't really matter and it's not affecting the narrative or affecting the action in any particular way, then I no longer care.
Yeah.
That gets into a whole philosophy thing, but the passive check is part of the rules, right? Like it says
is it?
Yeah. I'm looking at it right now. It says it can for a task that's done repeatedly, searching for secret doors over and over again, or if you want, as the DM, you want to secretly determine something.
But that's just for perception that it's referencing, right?
No. A passive check is a special kind of ability check that doesn't involve any die rolls, and then it goes on. It doesn't say just perception.
I was just thinking, because all those examples you listed were perception-based.
Yeah, but that's not it. Like, it doesn't say it's for perception. It's just passive checks.
Yeah. All right. Cool. So there you go. And
also, I would say that if getting into the philosophy thing, if the results don't really matter or aren't going to be interesting, don't make them roll the die. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Anyways,
yeah.
But I think we're all pretty happy with the new D&D.
And I think generally, like, yeah, I would say online too. Ignoring some of a couple of the big online scandals, generally people are pretty excited about this edition.
Do we want to talk about the scandals? They're so
doesn't matter.
Ridiculous.
No.
It's so asinine.
I don't want to. It is asinine, and I don't want to give it any power.
Yeah.
Any more than it already has.
Luckily, I think it's pretty much all run its course. I'm sure there's a few people there trying to keep the fire burning, but it kind of hit its head. There was a few really good blowbacks at the people stirring the shit up, and at least on the feeds I follow, I haven't really seen much since it's been maybe a month now, or kind of right around Gen Con, it sort of flared up, and then it's been pretty much dead since then.
Yep.
At least in what I've been seeing or haven't been seeing. So, I mean, we had the halfling thing. That's kind of new, but that's more silly than anything else.
But
one interesting sort of thing back from Gen Con again. When I was in the Paizo line, I was sort of listening to everybody talking about Pathfinder and like, I'll never go back to D&D, and they screwed us all over. And it was kind of interesting to hear all the naysay about the new version of D&D.
Mm-hmm.
And I say it was kind of funny because I was sort of that guy. Like, I had no intention of really getting into D&D again because I was like happy with Star Wars and Warhammer and Marvel and all those things. Like, yeah, I'm good. Like, and I was still, if I didn't get back into D&D, I still would be good. I was quite happy with those games. They're very good games. But that free thing is like, I gave it a chance. And I think, and it actually, I shouldn't say I think, based on the people I've talked to, there was sort of this general, like, D&D for a lot of us is a game we grew up on. So even though many of us moved away or just kind of stopped and at like 3rd edition or whatever the edition, you're kind of like, there's always, for a lot of us, there's always been this, you know what, D&D is still, you know, it's D&D. It's like my game. It's what I grew up on.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not that I had a hatred of Dungeons and Dragons. I had a sort of a dislike of certain mechanics. So like I kind of burned out on 3rd edition, and I may burn out on 5th edition. But there's always this, which I didn't really realize was there, but there's still this desire to come home again, if you will.
Yep.
And it's, you know, the online things, like I read through it, and there was nothing there that scared me off. And a lot of people have had this, and there's been a lot of positive word of mouth being generated online about this edition. And there's really, like when 4th edition came out, there was a lot of, this is awesome, this sucks, you don't know what you're talking about. There's a lot of the edition wars.
Mm-hmm.
And with 5th edition, there's people that are just like, yeah, I'm not into it, but I haven't seen the hardcore edition wars about this or any other edition. Mm-hmm. Because I think this version of D&D is sort of passive in a rule sense, because they never really rocked the boat. Like they gave us back the D&D that sort of the OSR crowd was sort of going gaga over. They marketed it well. They put out the starter set. It was pretty cheap. You know, and everybody's like, oh, I'll have to buy $3 and it's going to be $150. Well, yeah. But then you had like Amazon 50% off, Chapters 50% off, all these big retailers selling them for really, really cheap, so you can get in the door easily.
Yep.
And they haven't. All they've done, maybe there's a few people that I know that like 4E, and they're like, yeah, we'll stick with 4E, which is fine. But none of them are even like 5th edition sucks. No. Which you got that like in every other version of Dungeons and Dragons ever. There was generally a hatred for what was new and a love for what we had before. So the worst I've seen is like, I'm not really interested. That's about the worst I've heard anybody really comment about 5th edition.
Yeah, that's about as far as it would go for me as well.
Yeah.
Because most of the people that, so even those people that moved on to 4th edition were lovers of Dungeons and Dragons for the most part from before that, and those people that have come into D&D in 4th edition are young enough they don't have that much invested into it, so they're not that upset about it. So the people that did follow through into 4th edition that were D&D fans are happy to have their D&D back, because this edition is much more like the ones that came before. And they might find 4th edition to be a good game, but I doubt they're going to be as upset about returning to the roots of D&D. And those people that have moved on to Pathfinder, I'm very interested to see what is going to happen and what's going to happen to Paizo. Now, personally, I think Paizo is going to be able to weather this one way or the other. Even though Pathfinder does crash and burn, they were doing fine before they created Pathfinder with their adventure series and everything else. And they seem to be pretty smart business people. So I'm pretty sure that they have a contingency plan in place.
They're pretty entrenched.
They are, but you have to. I mean, like Pathfinder really is for the people that left D&D, and when D&D comes back, it's gonna. Okay, so I left D&D. I didn't go to Pathfinder. I didn't go to 5th edition. I went into many different games and found stuff that I liked. But I'm going back to D&D now because it's returned to something that I know and I love, and I think a lot of people that went to Pathfinder are gonna. D&D, like you said, it's D&D. There's a nostalgia factor. There's something about it. It gets a free pass on so much stuff. But when you actually put out a game that is as good as this one is right now, and again, I haven't gone through the entire book, don't have the DMG, don't have the monster manual, haven't run a long-term campaign, et cetera, all these caveats, it looks like a really awesome game that I'm very excited about. So I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of people that are going to move back to D&D from Pathfinder, but I don't know how much of a hit that's going to be for Pathfinder, and even if Pathfinder does take a hit, I think Paizo, that they're smart enough to be able to weather it, and that they're ready for it.
Sure. And, based on sort of what I heard, which is a very small sample, of the Paizo crowd, a lot of people play it because they like the power trip that Pathfinder is. Because Pathfinder is all about the talents and feats and really powering your character. This version of Dungeons and Dragons doesn't offer that. People that don't like that part of Pathfinder, of which I also heard people grumbling, saying, "What? I'm kind of tired of all the whole feat chain," which is why I left 3rd edition, and Pathfinder took that. They balanced it out kind of better, but still blow it up. Like you have entire books just devoted to advanced player options.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there is going to be a crowd that wants to go back to sort of that. Again, they kind of sort of tired of all this, and you want to start over, and D&D kind of gives you that reboot. And you've got like what 3 feats in Dungeons and Dragons, which are pretty optional. You don't have that power creep. You have your class, you have your level, and the bonuses that go along with it. The feat structure is really, I think that what's cool about the feat structure is it's not like a feat tree. It's like I want to take this one, and I'll take that one.
Yep.
And the trade-off is you lose your stat bonuses, which is actually pretty. For some people, that's a pretty like +2 to a stat, or I get this feat. The +2 to the stat is almost always useful, whereas the feat is situational. So I think that's a good give and take, and the feats are kind of fun. There's a few sort of combat-y ones, but again, it's not like with 3rd edition, where if you didn't really build your character to what he's going to be at 20th level, you really were suboptimally building that guy. And the problem with 3rd edition was because there were definitely better ways to build a character with the feats. Excuse me. If you were running high-level games, you set a challenge, and actually we experienced that where you didn't even have to be a high-level game, but you set a challenge rating, and that challenge rating is a certain expectation of a group composition. So you can have characters that are very well equipped to handle that challenge rating because they've been, I don't want to say min-max, but built with efficiency. And you have characters that people built because they thought it was kind of a cool idea. The problem is that if you build the challenge rating, if it's sort of kind of right in the middle, the guy that was efficiently built will walk through it, and the guys that weren't are going to get slaughtered.
Yep.
Just because you built your character wrong. Whereas with this edition, you don't really have that because all you're doing is following the level guide. You could like do something weird with the stats, like I'm going to be a fighter with 8 strength, 8 dex, 8 con, but really, really smart and really, really charismatic. Well, yes, fine. It's a poor choice, we'll just say, but I still don't think you'd be horribly gimped. Not by the time you hit those high levels with if you take your stat bonuses and everything on top of it. Yeah, you're not going to be as good. And I really think anybody that's doing that with their like building a fighter with poor stat choices is kind of being, I don't know,
it's trying
to do something. Yeah, exactly. Like you're trying to do something maybe to prove a point or. Yeah, I don't know what it is, but there are still certain expectations. Like that's why they have in the book, like, yeah, this is the way you should, a wizard should be smart or have a high intelligence because da-da-da-da.
Don't be a fucking idiot.
If you go outside of that, if you go outside of that, you're going to find it yourself more difficult. But it's not like if you built a fighter and I'm going to pick all these feats that aren't connected at all and do nothing for me, then you're screwed by the time you hit the high levels. You don't have that in this version.
No,
and then there's just a lot of little things that.
Yeah. A lot of the feats actually do give you, along with some kind of proficiency or whatever, like a lot of the armor ones increase your strength and dexterity by 1.
Right, yeah.
Like keen mind, increase your intelligence by 1 plus some other stuff. So it's not a total trade-off for that.
That's right. It's just you're specifically focusing on a stat. Which I think for a lot of the times, if you're taking those feats, intelligence was probably the one you're going to be doing anyways.
Exactly.
You're just not getting a +2. And it also, I mean, if you've started out with like a 16 or 17 intelligence, you put 3 feats, like 4 levels, or three levels into it, well, you can't go past 20. So now I can do something if I don't really care about bumping up my charisma or whatever. I can use these feats.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well,
Um,
it's we've been chatting for quite a while now, so we could probably go on all night. But I actually have to go to bed. I gotta wake up in the morning and work.
Yes.
But it's glad to hear you had a good time at Gen Con, and thank you, Wizards, for delivering the D&D that I love.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, well, I guess it's good night from Fraser.
Yeah, and good night from Rob.
And good night from Chris.
I had to think about that for a second.
And wait, who am I again?
What's my name again?
And there are wolves after me. Arrgh. Okay. Anyways, go play D&D. Do it now. All right. Good night.
Okay, I'm going now. I won't go to